Hi, I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. Welcome to The Lauren Epstein Show, here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic to me, which is how do we bridge the skills gap? How do we get more human beings working in jobs that are good paying jobs, that are going to put them on a career path, that are going to give them the ability to have the life that they want to lead and not anything other than that. And today I have incredibly special guests who are in the trenches of this, like doing it, not theoretical, but have actually built systems, have been honored in their fields, and are going to talk about what they're doing specifically with high school kids. So with me today, I'm going to introduce my guests. All the way from Tennessee is Becca Leech. Becca received a Fulbright Distinguished Award in teaching to the United Kingdom in order to research upper secondary educational options. In England, she focused on apprenticeships and now brings those ideas to students in rural Warren County, Tennessee. She's worked in education since 1991 as a teacher, consultant, and program coordinator. Becca, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks.
And she literally just drove here.
Yes, I did. Well, yes. I'm driving up to go to the National Fulbright Convention, so I stopped by on my way there.
Awesome. That's wonderful. And also on the phone, we have Rafael Alvarez. And I wish I had known, I wish I met you a long time ago, Rafael, because you have like this most incredible background. Rafael was named by Forbes Magazine as one of the world's top 30 social entrepreneurs and is the founder and CEO of Genesys Works. And we're going to talk more about what Genesys Works does. Rafael became an Ashoka Fellow, and if those of you who listen to the show know that we had the head of Ashoka here a few months ago, he was an Ashoka Fellow in 2006, and Ashoka does a program where they go around the world and they find social entrepreneurs who are going to make businesses that make a difference in the world. Not just about making money, it's about making money, but also making a difference, and Rafael was a fellow there in 2006. He was also awarded the Seoul Entrepreneurial Leadership Award from Texas A&amp University in 2012 and was inducted into the Immigrant Entrepreneur Hall of Fame also in 2012, which is awesome. Rafael, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So this is like a huge topic. I mean, we're like, this is an elephant in front of us. And the way I see the elephant, and I'd love to just kind of hear from both of you about the bigger contextual problem, is that in our culture now that we have a lot of people, and we're going to talk about high school students today, but a lot of young people who don't have the access to the education and don't know what education they need to get them the kind of jobs that are going to give them a lifestyle by which they can lead. We're not talking about McDonald's jobs. We're talking about jobs that lead into a career. And so this is a big problem, right? I mean, it's not just here in the States, but it's all over the world. We have this kind of weird schism in employment. Rafael, do you see that as the big problem, or am I missing something? And if you want to say more about it, please do.
No, absolutely, Lauren. The reality is that 2/3 of all jobs that are being created in the country right now require some sort of post-secondary education. And at the same time, only 15% of our inner city public school students are achieving that degree. So we are in a system where we have a lot of jobs without qualified people to occupy them, and a lot of people coming out of our public education system without the skills or the access to the jobs with which they can live in the economic mainstream. So there's a huge disconnect.
Huge, and it's across the board throughout the country, all 50 states.
Right. You know, Rafael was focusing on the urban community, but I come from a very impoverished rural community, and we face the exact same issues. You know, our students are not prepared for the workplace, just a small percentage, and our goal, we're not meeting the needs of our employers.
So I don't want to look to place blame, but where do you think the fundamental breakdown is? What's missing in our culture right now that this is what's been going on?
Well, I think it's a really complex set of issues, at least in our rural communities. You know, it's that interplay of we have a lot of people with health impairments and who are missing a lot of school. Chronic absenteeism is a real problem. And a lot of that's related to unmet health needs. But we also we have under-resourced public schools as well. When I started working in 2009 at the large rural public high school where I work now, I was starting a program that was targeted towards reducing our dropout rate and helping our students with disabilities to achieve at higher rates, to stay in school, to graduate from high school. And what I found from those kids is that the poverty was just so intense that they had so many issues with families who were sick and unable to really help them out. And there was a lot of hopelessness. And of course, that was in the height of the recession where there weren't a lot of jobs. We lost a lot of youth employment, especially. It was hard hit during the recession and one of the slowest sectors to bounce back. And only in the last couple of years in my area are we seeing it beginning to come back.
Wow. And Rafael, fundamentally, I mean, you work in cities. You've got, I think, 5 or 6 office facilities where you do your work. What do you see fundamentally as the problem?
Yeah, the way I see it is that we're all products, or we tend to be products of social inertia, right? We tend to do what those around us expect of us. We're all moving in tandem. And at least in urban communities, we have tens of thousands of kids that are living in the shadows of downtown, and they look at those buildings, and for them, it's a different world, and they only envision themselves working in those buildings, perhaps in the cafeteria or as a janitor, because entering into a professional career track is not even contemplated. It hasn't happened in their community. They don't have those kind of role models. And so in spite of the fact that conventional wisdom right now is that everybody should go to college, these kids don't have any knowledge of how to get there. They have loving parents that want their best for their kids, but they don't know how to get there. And so what happens is that students get to high school, and whether they graduate from high school or not, they're going to get the same minimum wage job that they envision for themselves. And what we need to do with a big disconnect here is help this student population realize that entering into a career path and the fact that they can succeed as professionals is totally within the realm of possibilities.
And we're going to get
that's why
we're going to get to some of the solutions later on in the show. But I want to just kind of focus on like the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you see? Yeah. Was there a shift? I mean, what was some of the? So the listeners are going to be honest. Like they're all going to have their judgments about why poor people are poor and why uneducated people are uneducated. And both of you are at the front lines of this. And I'd like to give them that perspective. You know, what's really going on? And I think, Becca, you kind of hit on it. It's a multifaceted problem. Healthcare is a problem. If they don't have the right healthcare, then they aren't able to go to school.
Opioid addiction. I mean, our employers locally, when I ask most of my employers what's the number one skill I could teach my students, my employers will lead with, well, first they need to pass a drug test.
Right. And so what do you think, Rafael? I mean, you know, we're all probably about the same generation. And what happened? I mean, my father was a vocational ed teacher in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And they were teaching people secretarial skills, nursing skills, merchandising skills. And then that school kind of went away. Where do we lose our way in this country?
I think that you just hit the nail on the head. So 30, 40 years ago, there were different possibilities for different kids, and the idea that some kids went to college, some people went into the trades, and they were just for everybody. And yet, maybe 30 years ago, the whole idea that everybody needs to go to college took root, and vocational programs kind of got out of favor. Schools stopped offering that. It resembled more of the old tracking, right, which was very against the ideals of this country. And
when you say tracking,
with educators,
so the listeners talking about, what do you mean by when you say tracking, so people know what you mean?
Well, I mean, it used to be that teachers made the decisions of this kid, is going to go the academic route, and this other kid is going to go the trade route, and race got involved, and so the black and the brown kids were tracked into the non-college tracks, and so it became more of a social justice issue. But here's what happened in the meantime, that we got rid of all the vocational training programs in high school, so for the most part, and there's a lot of kids, regardless of their background, that could absolutely join the economic mainstream, by getting really good at a trade, right, or some sort of middle skill, which is defined as a career that requires some sort of post-secondary education, but not a 4-year education. And somehow we missed that. Now, I think that these opportunities let young people discover what they're good at, how they can contribute, and that missing, it takes away a valuable opportunity.
Yeah, and we've really, it's unfortunate. It makes me sad because I know that my dad did a really good job teaching people these skills. In fact, one time, one of his students got a hold of me on LinkedIn and said, "Are you Martin Epstein's son?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, he taught me," and she completely loved and appreciated the education she got. And she still uses some of the skills, and that we've kind of lost. Like somehow being, it's funny. I pay my plumber more than I make for their time. My electrician and a lot of the trades, they make a good living.
Yeah.
That's true. And when you were saying about vocational training, a lot of it was focused on jobs that have fundamentally changed. The jobs themselves have become much more automated. But I do think there is an infusion of resources and new things that are going to look at updating those jobs. And so now I think Rafael was very right that when we first in my community started talking about kids selecting career pathways and doing more vocational training, the pushback, the argument against was the tracking, because I think we conflated those two things. But the tracking piece was administrators and teachers choosing the path for the student, where what we're talking about now is offering career options and pathways into a real job and using vocational education to help our kids achieve the pathway to the career that they want.
Right. And
exactly.
And the folks who are listening, Becca is a teacher in the Tennessee school systems and has created this program. Rafael is the founder and CEO of this organization called Genesys Works. And Rafael, quickly, tell us kind of fundamentally what Genesys Works does.
Genesys Works trains and hires underprivileged high school students during their senior year in high school. We train them the summer before their senior year on technical skills such as information technology or accounting or business operations. And then we train them also on professional communication skills. And then we assign them to work on our clients during their entire senior year in high school, about 20 hours a week, in professional capacity, with doing things that actually provide value to a company. And we pay the students, of course. We charge the companies for the services the students provide, and the margin between the two helps us to support the training and the program in general. And so what happens here after a year of working in those jobs, students realize that it's not that hard, that there is a path. We also help provide the knowledge of what careers are out there, what educational requirements they have, college access. We help them with the essays. We help them with scholarships, so that at the end of the program, they have options. They know what it is that they want to do, or maybe what they don't want to do. But whatever it is, they know how to pursue that next step, as opposed to leaving it to chance.
Wow, interesting. So we're going to come right back, take a quick station break. Hi, I'm Lauren Epstein, and you're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show, where we talk about jobs, careers, and the workplace, here on 96.7 FM. If you're interested in being on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or email me at Lorne, Lorne, at electriccow.com. You can check out our Facebook page, which is Lauren Epstein, and also our Mixcloud account. So if you go to mixcloud.com, Lauren Epstein, you'll find our shows. Thanks so much. Welcome back. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show here on 96.7 FM. Today, I am talking to Becca Leech from Tennessee and Rafael Alvarez, who's the CEO of Genesys Works. And we're talking about how do we kind of bridge the skills gap, and we're talking about younger folks who are in the high school age. So, Becca, what's the program that you created in Tennessee, and how did it come about?
Well, our program is very much publicly funded, and it's state grant funded, and it's as a part of our public school system. So this is not something that I personally created, but that I'm part of, and that I manage a transition school to work program that is funded through vocational rehabilitation, that its funding came through the 2014 Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act.
Which is a federal act.
And that is a federal act. And then our state, the state of Tennessee has infused a lot of funds and a lot of initiative into trying to address the skills gap for our students and into career education. When we first looked at the problem with our students' low achievement in Tennessee, we were looking at raising standards and having kids take higher level coursework and increasing our graduation requirements. And we did increase our graduation rates a lot, and national graduation rates have really increased. But along with that has not come a rise in high school achievement or post-secondary readiness. So I think employers often don't know what a high school diploma really means.
But tell me, before you get into that, tell me how you came about this, because it's quite the adventure.
Right, it is, because I was serving this population of essentially what we considered dropout students and bringing them back into school, and we were working on standards-based education, and I was trying to teach them academics, and I do a lot of math instruction, but I found that the students, and they were responding, but they were so hopeless. I think I just mentioned just the hopelessness that they would ever find a job, and mainly they felt that their education was not relevant to what they were doing. And when we were talking about giving them experiences working and learning some job skills so that they could apply the knowledge that they were learning in their academic classrooms to the workplace, they just didn't see the relevance.
How many students, I'm sorry, but all of us probably thought at one time in high school, why am I learning algebra?
Certainly that's true. But these students also looked at it and said, there aren't any jobs out there anyway. Nobody around me is working. I think Rafael hit it on the head when you look around and see what other people are doing, and you see they're either not working at all, or they're desperately trying to find a job everywhere they can, or they're jumping from one horrible job to another. And some of the jobs in our community.
But how'd you get to England?
So I applied for the. I submitted a proposal to go look at England because in 2009, the UK modernized their apprenticeship. Of course, they've had apprenticeship in Europe since the medieval times, but they put a lot of resources into developing an apprenticeship program. And so I was selected to get to go to England and spend a school year there, traveling around looking at different options for students post-16. So we're looking at 16 really through 20 or so years old students who had not been successful in school, who, as they look at it, hadn't received the kinds of scores, academic scores in their lower secondary level, that they were really not looking at a university pathway. But the apprenticeship program offers them an opportunity to earn while they learn. It's usually like an 80% in the workplace and 20% in a classroom sort of a model where they earn credit, but they also they don't earn credits because it really is more that they earn industry qualifications while they're also getting their academics and tying academics to what they're learning in the classroom.
And they're getting paid.
And they're getting paid while they do that.
And at a job that's probably a trade type job.
Yes, possibly. Well, actually, when we think of apprenticeships in here, they're largely things like construction and advanced manufacturing. They're things, and most of our apprenticeships in the U.S. are filled by adults, and they're very male-dominated. But there's in all sorts of fields. I watched a young woman who was working in a glossy magazine office. She was in media design. She was getting her industry certifications in media design. I saw people in department stores doing retail. Also, Santander Bank does a lot of apprenticeships for people in finance and business. Rolls-Royce is they operate on an apprenticeship model, and they have young people there getting apprenticeships in a lot of different areas. And then it moves on, and they have higher apprenticeships where you actually can earn the equivalent of university qualifications.
It seems like, just bracketing this, that our school systems are really failing the kids and the economy, that they really have not gotten into tune with what it is that is needed. And that these aren't like, quote unquote, stupid kids, right? These are smart people. They're not given the tools to succeed. Not everyone wants to become a mathematician or what would be called traditional didactic educational results, right? Where they're sitting in a class and they can do that kind of thing.
Right. And like you say, what would we do if we didn't have plumbers?
Yeah. Be bad.
Right.
So you went to England for a year, and then you came back, and then what happened?
And it seemed really fortuitous because when I left, I was talking about all this need for workplace training and doing these proposals, and no one was very responsive. We were still talking about higher academics, preparing everyone for the university path. But when I came back, it seems like things shifted, and especially in Tennessee. I talked about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Our governor started a Drive to 55, which is this initiative to let 55% of Tennesseans be able to have some sort of qualification because as Rafael was pointing out, we have this gap where we need people with industry qualifications. We need people with more degrees in our workforce, and they're just not there. So money started to come and new initiatives that our Department of Education started a new framework for work-based learning. And so I joined a leadership team working with that group to work with teachers on training about workplace learning. And so that framework has increased work-based learning in our classrooms, meaning that our students are going out in our public school classrooms and they are working with local businesses and having internships, both paid and unpaid. Sometimes our kids need to get unpaid if they have no experience before.
We'll talk more about the content, but that's your – and so Rafael, I want to hear, I mean, you've been doing this for, I think, 16 or 17 years, I guess since 2002. What caused you to do this, and what had you been doing up to that? How did this all kind of come about?
So I was a corporate strategist in a large company, and I served on the board of a charter school. And I went to a graduation ceremony in the summer of 2001 and saw all the kids happy about graduating. And I realized that they were first in the family to graduate from high school. So I went down to the floor to congratulate them, shake their hands, and as I did that, I asked them, well, what are you going to do now? And what I realized is that they were just going to continue in the jobs that they had in high school, which are good, honest jobs when you're in high school, but do not provide the pathways into a family-sustaining wage. And so as I looked into these kids' eyes and their faces, I saw kids that were sharp, that were motivated, that had spark. They just had no idea that there was a different path in life. And so I remember thinking, man, I could see the future, because I had, in my job, I traveled through factories all throughout the United States and in the world, and saw people, stuck in occupations that I thought that they could do better in. And here we go, we have these kids pursuing the same path. And so I thought back then, if I could just train kids to work in a meaningful internship during their senior year of high school, discover that they're much more qualified to do something else into a career that allows them to progress in their income and eventually join the middle class. If I could just allow them to do that during their senior year in high school, what difference would that make in those decisions that they make the senior year in high school that affect the rest of their life? And so one thing is to another. I quit my job. I started with 10 students back in 2002, and we grew from there.
So when you say you started with 10 students, you just okay, what did you do? I mean, sit around.
Well, there's four things that need to be in place for a program like Genesys Works to function anywhere. One, we have to have the relationships with the schools where we're going to recruit the students. Second, we have to have relationships with the companies where the students are going to work. Third, we need facilities and people. We need to hire the people that are going to come into the organization and actually make this happen. And then the fourth one is the financial component. Now, once our program is up and running, most of the budget comes from the earned income that we get from the clients. But to get up and going, we need philanthropy or federal funding. So those four things had to come together. They had to come together back in the first year. They did for a small group of students, and those to continue to be in place as we expand to new communities.
That's awesome. I mean, I have to say, I'm just honestly in awe of both of you for kind of doing this good work, and clearly it's inspired work to focus your life energy on making a difference for others. Because what I'm hearing is that there's not a lot of money in this business. And that this is something that's about really making a difference in the world and for the rest of us.
Yeah, and it's amazing, Lauren, when you think about how easy it is to change the trajectory of life for a young person by giving him or her an opportunity at this stage, and then see a whole different trajectory of life. If that doesn't motivate you, if that doesn't inspire you, if you have an opportunity to provide that opportunity to a young person and you don't take it, something's wrong, right? But I think that most of America is it's great people that want to help those who are underprivileged, and for those people who are in this position to provide jobs and opportunities, especially when those jobs are going to help their own company do better and be more efficient. Not taking this opportunity is a shame.
Yeah, there's an irony that large corporations don't want to pay taxes, which would then go fund these educational programs, which would then provide them employees to have bigger companies.
Exactly.
Well, and also the importance for these corporations to form bonds with their community, especially, in our community. We don't have a lot of businesses, but those businesses really, really depend on the consumers there. And when our kids don't have high aspirations and they're not contributing to the economy, then that really hurts the businesses too. So the better the kids can do, the better our communities do, the better those corporations do as well.
And for the folks who are listening, I want to make sure that we're clear that obviously these programs are not for everyone, right? There are kids who go to high school and go to college, and that's fine. And that the folks who are at the lower rungs of our socioeconomic ladder, if you want to say that, but they don't have as much money, they don't have as much resources, and they have health challenges, or they have a lack of access to how do I get going, are just as smart, just as capable as anyone else. We just have not set up the right tools, the right mechanisms, the right pathways for them to get into society and be productive members and to contribute and to have fuller lives. So, I want to just make sure that they're listening, the folks who are listening get that. There is no othering. You don't point to these folks and say, well, they're not whatever. That is not the case. You folks are on the ground, and these are really good, hardworking human beings.
And I think a lot of people assume that our students have low aspirations, that they don't have goals for themselves, and although they don't have the kind of models to really know what reasonable goals are. I have never met a student, even my students who are dropouts, who had just checked out of everything. All those students really did, when you talk to them, have aspirations. They wanted to be independent. They wanted to have a job. They wanted to earn money. I often had people tell me, oh, when you try to recruit these kids, they're just going to say, nah, I plan to live on a check. And I don't see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a meme that we need to break up. Mm-hmm. That hopefully the listeners of this show we'll start to absorb and really kind of reflect on how we've set up our educational system and the cultures that we deal with. America is a big country with lots of different segments.
And one thing that I saw when I was traveling internationally, because through my connections, I also went and did observations in Germany, where they have a very strong vocational education program, and in Finland, where they have really high levels of education. And what I found was that in every country, there were always a group of people who needed more resources, who needed more support. But in those countries, there were a group of people and resources being put into helping that group of people who really struggle more than everyone else. And
well, their governments seem to have and the citizens seem to have a greater deal of empathy for their fellow citizens than I think we do here. I just wanted to call out Genesys Works. I was reading an article after the storms in Austin. Genesys Works contributed $30,000 to help low-income students return to school in Houston and the surrounding areas. Is that right? No. Actually, it was a bit more than that, Lord. How much was it? Yeah, it was $340,000. $340,000. And where'd that money go?
Yeah. So, by the way, we were based in Houston, Texas, not in Austin. But in Houston, when the storms really flooded a lot of the city, and thousands of people were in serious financial need, what we were able to do is in 7 days, just by sending an email out, we're able to get our supporters throughout the country to contribute this, and we raised over $300,000 in the first 7 days. And so what we did is we had the capacity to be able to triage and identify what students needed, what help, and put money in their hands immediately, much faster than any government agency could have done it. Of course, we still depend on government agencies to provide housing and things that they're going to need long term, but we're able to put $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in their hands so that they could buy the clothes, buy the supplies, buy the transportation that they needed to get back to school and back to work immediately and return to a sense of normalcy, because that's what was most needed immediately. And we were happy to be able to have done that for the students that were affected.
So I think it was a report from your organization, but was it you that had done a survey that for every $1 that you put in, you get $13 back out? Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. A professor in Columbia University did that study, and this is an interesting point. I'm glad you came back to that, because I want to talk about this is not charity, pure charity. This is good for business and good for communities. Becca, you were talking about that, right? The reality is that our businesses need these jobs to be filled, right? So an investment into programs that allow students to enter the path to occupy those jobs, it returns multiple times to society, it returns multiple times to business. And so to the extent that we're able to connect these two systems that today are disconnected, the education and the business, everyone benefits.
And Becca, do you feel like do you have a sense of what the return is on the investment, the cash investment into students that go through your program?
I also have read the studies of the investment, but it's definitely true that it multiplies in lots of ways that are even hard to quantify or hard to measure, just in terms of the effect that the student has on other people. When I've had students, I always have former students who call the next year who beg to come in and talk to new students, to be a guest speaker, and say, I want to tell other people about this. So even if they haven't directly gone through the program, the students who are finding jobs and finding success are going out there and convincing their peers to go ahead and shoot for something higher. They're being a model within their community. And they're also making inroads into our employers in our areas, so that our employers are seeing that, young people are actually capable of doing a lot of these jobs, and that we should invest in them, because they will have a payoff there. So I think that when that figure, about every $1 leads to 13. They've also been measuring some of the ripple effect of those dollars that you invest in communities.
Yes, I think it's important to see this as an economic problem. That if we have people that come into society and don't have skills and can't get jobs and aren't meeting the employer's needs, then they're going to go to jail or have drug problems or live off the dole and have just be kind of more of a drag on society than a contributing factor, which is what people want to do. They want to contribute. They just need the tools. So let's get into some of the tools once we get back from a break. I want to hear kind of what it is that you both are doing. Okay. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. With me today, I have my guests, Becca Leech and Rafael Alvarez, and we're talking about how to bridge the skills gap for folks who are in high school. So, Rafael, tell me what actually happens. I know there's 4 things that, and how can people, well, maybe the how later, but what is it, the 4 things that folks do? I know you have an 8-week training program. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, so we start with partnering with schools that serve the population that we exist to serve. And then inside these schools, one, maybe a counselor or a technology teacher or sometimes a principal, identifies the students who fit the profile. And let me tell you who fits the profile for Genesys Works. We call them the quiet middle. These are not the super performers who are already engaged in a great academic path, or involved in extracurricular activities. They're going to be fine. It's not either the other side of the students who are on the verge of dropping out of high school, because we're not equipped to handle the needs that these students have. But that middle of the pack student, that B and C student who's fairly quiet, not involved in anything, has never gotten picked for anything in the past, these are the students who we like to focus on without regard to grades. They come into our program, we give them all the training they need, no experience necessary, no work experience or no knowledge of computers necessary. We teach them everything that they need to know in order to succeed in the workplace. And then once they finish the training program during the summer, then we engage them to work in one of our clients. The students are our employees, they're W-2 employees of ours, and then we assign them to work at our clients, and we manage that relationship.
So the 8 weeks of training they get, is there a connection between what your partner clients want and the training that you give? And what is the training that you do?
Absolutely. We're in constant communication with our clients, and we have about 200 major corporations as clients right now, and we're asking them all the time, what skills do young people need to have in order to provide value to your business? Again, this is not about charity. This is about providing value to your business. And if we train the students to do that, the companies are going to be willing to pay for those services and challenge the student to therefore provide those services. And so our program has evolved. Our technical skills curriculum always evolves based on what clients tell us they need.
And what are the curriculums now that you have?
So in different cities, we have different curriculums, but by and large, we have information technology is our core.
And what does that mean? Like when you say IT, what is it that you're actually training them?
Yeah, so our students, for instance, can come in and image computers, prepare them for deployment, distribute them to the employees in the companies, perform first-level help desk support, which is 90+% of the calls are first-level support. And so what we do by students coming in and taking care of those jobs, it frees up the full-time employees of the companies to handle the second and third level support and the more advanced things like networking and servers. And so our students take care of the client, the individual personal computers for the employees of the company. And that's one area. Another area is business operations and accounting, where students actually get involved in the accounts payables or the tax departments and provide some support to them as well.
And Becca, so how does your program work? Where do the students come from and what do they learn?
Okay, so we work in tandem with a lot of other programs. And so, for example, you were talking, we're public school. We serve every student. Our goal is to give a career pathway to every child, period. And so you were saying that, some students, they're just going to college, they're going to be fine anyway. And that is true, that years ago there was some money set aside for early post-secondary opportunities. EPSOs is the new buzzword on early post-secondary opportunities.
And what does that mean?
And it means, for example, dual enrollment credits where students go on and take college credits while they're still in high school, or AP or IB where they get college credit for work, but also industry certifications where they could earn, say, a welding certificate or a CNA license while they were still in high school. When initially there was some money funded for students to get these early post-secondary opportunities, and a group of students did, and then they decided they wanted to broaden, the state decided they wanted to broaden the number of students who were getting these opportunities, and so they put more money into it. But what they found was the same students were just getting more EPSOs. The kid who was going for 2 dual enrollment classes added an AP class. The kid,
right.
They always were going to this same group. And unfortunately, in our rural areas, because in my community we don't have a university, so those same kids were going away to 4-year universities and unfortunately weren't coming back. That's the brain drain, where we put our resources into a group of students who are not going to bring that resource back to us. So that's where the initiative to add more of those industry qualifications. And we still depend, our 2 largest employers are manufacturing. We don't have a lot of professional corporate jobs in our area. But those jobs went away from things that our young people were accustomed to thinking that they could get a decent paying job at a factory doing a low-skill work. Well, that's all been automated now. And so the school has gotten a lot of funds we have a mechatronics lab. So mechatronics is the field where you program and set up the robots, basically, that run the factories. And
the CNC machines.
Right.
And all those.
And you can get industry certifications to be able to operate that equipment. So our school has a lab that does that. And so a lot of those kids, I think, are where Rafael's talking about your middle kids. They're going in and getting those certifications, and we're offering dozens of those now, different certifications in
like
different areas. They can be things like child care certifications that people are getting. They're definitely the nursing, for drawing blood and that kind of thing, but automotive certifications and these mechatronics certification kinds of things to work in manufacturing.
I have a friend who is the director of HR of a collision company out in the Midwest. they've got, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 employees. They can't find people to be technicians. Nobody wants to be because there's just not enough people, and they don't have a system to train people to become collision technicians. And these are $50,000 or $60,000 a year jobs.
And I can't tell you how many of my students want to do a collision. That's one of that is the top the top field that my students would love to do.
And are you
collision
teaching
repair?
kids?
Yeah, and we do have collision repair programming, but then they often need to go somewhere else to get the higher level training. And many of our students are hesitant to go somewhere else out of our community, to travel out of there. But
so that's another barrier that's in the way of.
Absolutely, a lot of the jobs they want exist, but not where they're going to go get them, or they're not accessible to them if they're not willing to relocate, and there are a lot of reasons to not be able to relocate. But but my program is then to say, okay, who's left? I'm always every time I hear someone talk about a program, well, we try to select the best and brightest. I think, well, then where are the rest of the kids going? I mean, what are we doing for everybody else? So I'm what do we do for everybody else? So I do vocational assessments to try to help students decide what they would do. Then we try to give intensive training. And a lot of our students need training in what we call employability skills, just that idea of you have to show up every day. How do you dress for a job? How do you talk to people, and just practicing professional talking, discussions with people. And so we place our students, our goal is always our students are going to go to a paid internship or job that they're going to work on their skills. But a lot of our students with more intensive needs take an unpaid internship, and sometimes one of our largest employers in our community, and this is true in many rural settings in Tennessee, our third largest employer is in fact our public school system. And so we have our students do an internship in the office or the teacher center where they make they develop supplies for students and order supplies, or the mailroom or the library, where they do a supervised internship just to learn those skills and practice them before we place them with a mentor in the community. So
then they get a mentor.
And then we place them in the community. And so a large piece of my job is developing relationships with community employers and allowing students to work, say, at the local Walgreens with the manager as the mentor, and they work there part-time.
And can you describe the efficacy of your program, and how well have you been doing? What's the numbers or any results that you can share?
Well, this program, there has been a small program, but we really only ramped up our program 2 years ago. So we haven't had a long time to gain efficacy data on it. Although we did have, I'm trying to think, we had, of our students, we had all of them either went into, at the end, had some paid internship or employment, or were taking extra coursework. We're going into post-secondary college.
So you're on the program's still on the trajectory. It haven't landed enough to see what's going on.
Right, but we have seen increased employment for our students, and we have seen a great increase in their application and being accepted into post-secondary training.
So politicians, hear that. More employment. More employment means more state and local revenue. So, Rafael, what kind of results have you seen from your program, other than the 13-to-1 ratio of return on investment?
Yeah, we can measure the outcomes of our program in three ways. One, or we want to measure them in three ways. One is what happens academically, right? Where do they go to college? Where do they continue their education after high school? That's one. The second one is what are they doing in the workforce? How much income are they having? Are they making? And the third one, which we don't know how to measure yet, but the most important one is, what happened in terms of mindset shift, right? How did they acquire those skills with which they will develop resiliency in the workplace and be able to continue to succeed for the rest of their working career, right? So in terms of the first one, academically, over 90% of our students go on to college. That's a mixture of 2-year and 4-year colleges, and over 60% of them succeed when they get there. So that's great. That's much better than a comparable group. But that means that still we have 35 to 40% of the students who are going to college and not succeeding in college. So then it comes in the second one, which is workforce. What we've learned is that 92% of our students, when they go to college, they still need to work. They continue in their job somehow. And that's really important because for populations that struggle academically, it's that work experience that's going to get them out of the hole and into successful careers. And so what we are seeing is that 5 years after students leave our program, 74% of them are working full time, and the median income of those working is about $45,000 a year.
Wow, that's great.
So those are the metrics that we are proud of.
You're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. Today, we are talking with Becca Leech and Rafael Alvarez about what we can do to support high school students in becoming productive citizens. You mentioned something, Rafael, which I thought was really spot on, which is resilience. I think everyone listening to the show, and those of you who are guests, know that probably one of the strongest skills you have is your resilience. Your ability to, if you're lucky and you kind of have an easy life, that's great, but most of us have challenges. I think that life is designed that way. And your ability to bounce back and overcome is really what got you where you are. And I'm sure, Rafael, when you were starting Genesys Works, that you had a lot of challenges, but your resilience, your ability to envision something beyond what's in front of you, got you through. And I think that may be missing for some of the folks that initially get into your programs, which is around them, their bubble is so is so reified, it's so fixed that they don't see, the folks around them being resilient and kind of doing their life's purpose, whatever it might be. How do you develop someone's resilience?
Lauren, it reminded me of a few months ago, I was talking to a group of students, and they asked me, what's it like to be a CEO? And my answer was, just right off the cuff, what I said is, I'm always scared. And they didn't expect that answer. And, well, what do you mean you're always scared? I go, I'm always scared because we're always pushing the envelope. We always are trying to get to that next level, right? Expand the reach and the impact of our organizations, whatever that may be. And what I said is, when you come to recognize that being scared is actually a good thing, because that means that you're stretching, that you're growing. And the more you stretch, the more you learn that you can overcome challenges and barriers, the better off you are in life. You develop that resiliency. And that's why experiential programs, that's why work programs during high school are so important, because they let the student experience those challenges and those barriers and succeeding through those barriers while they're in high school, and develop that sense of resiliency that is impossible to teach inside the classroom. Right? They have to get out there. They have to experience it. Our students are afraid of the corporate world just by nature and by virtue of the communities in where they grew up. And yet by experiencing this, they learn that, they can come in, that they can mess up every now and then, but messing up is not the end of the track. It's just being able to recognize that, hey, what did I do wrong? How can I do it better, right? And so this set of experiences and stretching, particularly during these formative years, is going to stay with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I know it's true in my life. Becca, what do you see for the future of your organization?
We are really working to develop more and more partnerships with local businesses and
in Tennessee.
And I think that there are a lot of companies that specialize in working in small communities. I mean, their business base is our rural communities. I mean, places like Walmart and Dollar General Store and Lowe's, and these places have a trajectory for a good job, corporate jobs and that sort of thing. But I think developing more relationships with them so that they will help us establish those pathways for students, so that they will work with our public schools and understand what an important part our public schools play in our everyday life in our rural schools. And
how do we share this message, the work that you're doing? Have you published anything, or if other teachers who are listening to this, and I hope other teachers are listening to this, how can they say, yeah, that sounds like something I want to do?
I do want to do some writing and publish some things about it. But there are good resources I know coming out of the work that's being done in Tennessee, and I think that nationally we're sharing a lot of things that different states are doing in different models. But we need to continue sharing that, and we need to continue our models. That I think that's one thing that has happened in Tennessee. I participated as part of a career forward task force that brought in large corporations, so the CEOs of those corporations, along with lawmakers, along with educators and education people, to talk about how we can partner. Because I think that's the important thing, is that we look at this as an economic issue, but it affects all of our areas, that we work together.
You hit it nail on the head, is partnership. Mm-hmm. Really, partnering is about a big part of solving this problem. And Rafael, as we close up, how do you see your organization going forward?
Today we're directly serving a couple of thousand kids this year, and they're making millions of dollars in earnings. And when you add the multiplier effect, the effect on the economy is tens of millions of dollars, and that's great. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Studies show that the skills gap is real and it's huge, and there's millions of jobs out there that we need to equip people to be able to occupy. And so the question for us is, how can we not only play a direct role, but also help the entire field develop these connections between school and work, so that not just a couple thousand students, but tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of students get this opportunity to experience work while in high school, and therefore, set their sights to occupy those jobs that our American industry needs.
That's wonderful. And Rafael, how can folks reach out to you if they want to?
They can absolutely go to our website, find the contact tab, and send us an email at the email address that is on the website. And certainly, if they are connected, if they are in one of the cities that we serve, which can be found on our website, reaching out to the local office is a great way to get connected.
And your website is Genesys Works. And do you have a Twitter account, Rafael?
Gosh, man, I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm not in Twitter myself. I think it's something like Genesys Works.
All right.
It must be. If you search for
we'll
Genesys
let you off the
Works,
hook.
I'm sure we have a Twitter account. I'm embarrassed to say.
Rebecca, how can folks reach out to you if they want?
Well, I have a Twitter account. I'm at Becca Leech.
At Becca Leech. Awesome. I want to thank you both. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to just send you all the best for the programs that you're working on, and we here at the show just want to have you succeed tremendously and make a difference in this world. Thank you, and thank you for listening to another episode of The Lauren Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein, here on 96.7 FM. We'll see you next week, Monday at 10 a.m.